Hello and welcome to the Leaders in Supply Chain podcast. I am your host, Radu Palamariu, Global Supply Chain Practice Head for Morgan Phillips Executive Search. Today I'm happy to have with us Vijay Anand, Worldwide Sales and Distribution, VP Travel, Transportation and Hospitality for IBM, as well as Todd Scott, VP of Blockchain Global Trade at IBM. The topic of our discussion today will be TradeLens, the joint project between Maersk and IBM, which applies blockchain solutions to the world's global supply chain. TradeLens is a blockchain-enabled shipping solution designed to promote more efficient and secure global trade, bringing together various parties to support information sharing and transparency. So far, 94 organizations have already actively been involved and agreed to participate on the TradeLens platform. More than 20 port and terminal operators, including PSA Singapore, International Container Terminals Services, Modern Terminals in Hong Kong, etc., PIL, as well as Hamburg Süd as global container carriers, customs authorities in the Netherlands, Saudi Arabia, Singapore, Australia, and Peru, along with custom brokers, BCOs, as well as freight forwarders, including Agility, Siva, Damco, Kotachi, PLH Trucking Company, Encotrans, and Worldwide Alliance. They are all also participating in this project. So we are looking forward to find out more about it. Vijay and Todd, thank you for joining us today. And maybe if you can say a couple of words about yourselves just as a brief introduction.
Thank you, Radu. Thanks for inviting me and Todd today. So my name is Vijay Anand. I have responsibility in the global industries team covering Asia Pacific, Greater China, and Japan for all of the travel, transportation, and hospitality industries. I also have responsibility for TradeLens across these geography as well. So I'd like to introduce Todd now.
Thank you very much, Vijay and Radu. It's a pleasure for me to be here. As Global Trade, VP of Global Trade for our blockchain division, I look after our supply chain-based solutions, of which we have two today. We have TradeLens, which we're going to spend a little bit more time talking about, and also IBM Food Trust.
Super. So before we deep dive into TradeLens, let's just take a moment to briefly and simply explain to our audience what is blockchain actually.
Sure. First of all, this whole concept of blockchain, think of it as a platform. And if you think about it, for the last 40 years, platforms have played a pivotal role in allowing businesses and companies to go to the next level, to share value across a particular platform. Blockchain happens to be a technology platform. And so one of the things that everyone should be thinking about is think about an environment where you can exchange data in a secure fashion and knowing that you can trust everything that's exchanged between you and your partners. And what we're doing with TradeLens, while it's blockchain-based, you will see we're trying to transform and digitize how global shipping is done in a pretty effective manner.
So just to add to that, just think of blockchain as a decentralized and digitized distributed ledger that records transaction between multiple parties in a very secure way.
Got it. So basically, it's making the whole ecosystem safe. It's very hard to hack, right? And you can exchange information, which is between parties
Securely and permission.
Security and permission. Okay. So TradeLens is a blockchain-enabled tool, right, that helps kind of partners in the supply chain gain vital access to critical end-to-end supply chain information and data quickly, securely, accurately, and seamlessly. We can kind of summarize it, right?
Correct.
So tell us a little bit of what's the biggest problem that this tool would solve.
So let's think about what happens today in shipping products across the globe. You have a lot of different ecosystem participants. You have beneficial cargo owners. You have ocean carriers. You have freight forwarders. You have ports, and you have customs. All of those entities have different systems today. So what has to happen in order to exchange data? You have to either manually have interactions, and that manual could be paper, or it could literally mean a customer service agent picking up the phone and calling 5 different enterprises to understand where the status of a particular product or the status, more importantly, in this case, of a container. And so what TradeLens is looking to do is it is a platform where everyone can interface into a single platform, and everyone can receive information. So you'll have subscribers as well as publishers. And the nice thing is, instead of there being the disparate channels which they communicate, there'll be one channel. And instead of there being lack of timeliness in terms of exchanging data, now they'll be able to exchange data in milliseconds.
So I mean, it sounds like an excellent way to do that. But let's just, I mean, if we think practically and in reality of what's happening today in shipping, right? It's quite it's an industry where sometimes there's lack of standards. Like you said, it's quite paper focused, right? Even in China and India, they don't accept electronic bill of ladings, right? Ports, terminals, transshipment hubs, sometimes they're not integrated between themselves. So how in a practical way, how can that be addressed?
So first of all, one of the things that we're committed to with TradeLens and leveraging blockchain technology is openness. So the first thing we're committed to is any of the APIs that we use to develop for TradeLens will be open for everyone and available for everyone to see. We have over 135 of those APIs today. Let's put that off to the side for a second. But also this concept of standards, and we know the industry is trying to coalesce around having those standards. We're working very directly with CFACT. Whatever standards come from CFACT, we're also partnering with OpenShippers.org. We're ensuring and committed to having those standards be part of our platform. But now, so that's kind of where we're going. But if you think about it from a standard standpoint, we're not changing anyone's existing environment. We are not saying to everyone out there, throw away your existing systems. What we've done is created a platform that they can exchange information with. That makes it a lot easier. We're seeing today with the almost 100 companies we've been interacting with, we're seeing as little time as 4 days for them to be able to publish information onto the system with our onboarding. And in some, it's taken a little bit longer than that. So having an open platform, having available APIs will make things a lot easier than it has been in the past. And even if there are differences between certain geographies in the world, which I'll go into a little bit later when it comes to customs filing, we still think this is the pathway to get there, certainly better than we have today.
So this is also about improving customer experience, reducing cost, and also improving operational efficiency, which we didn't have in the past because technologies like blockchain did not exist in the past. So this actually helps us to bring everything to the network and make it operate as a centralized network for the whole industry.
Got it. Because I think there was an example in 2014. I was reading that Maersk followed a refrigerated container filled with roses and avocados from Kenya to Netherlands. So basically what they found out is that almost 30 people and organizations were involved in that process of that box on its journey to Europe, which is a lot, right? So the shipment took about 34 days to get from the farm to the retailers, including 10 days waiting for documents to be processed. One of the critical documents went missing, only to be found later in a pile of other documents, right? So how would TradeLens improve this type of situation?
So that's a great question. How it would improve it is you talk about documents. I talked about the tracking of the container a second ago, but documents being on the blockchain and being in a single place would allow, or there's also workflows that are associated with that. So what it will essentially say, the smart contract could say, once Todd is done with the contract, then that contract will automatically go to Vijay. It's online. If I see that Vijay hasn't done his approval, I can actually say to Vijay, hey, this needs to move to the next place. It's not going to get lost on a stack of paper. Documents like certificates of origins and the example that you gave, it wound up being 14 days before the product was released, because a document got lost on the desk. Well, if it's sitting on the blockchain, it's not going to get lost.
Not to mention the cost involved and the audit process involved and all those things. All those goes away with blockchain because everyone has visibility to it. So you don't do internal independent audit anymore.
Yes. So I think I'll chip in with a new question here, because I think a major a major, let's say, concern that people will have will be on the security of the system, right? And the security of the network and the security of the blockchain. Because yes, all this will be transparent. Yes, they will be accessible to different parties and in real time, and no document will be lost. But what if it's hacked, right? And I think maybe let's address that for a moment.
Well, I mean, first of all, I'll never be so bold as to say that nothing could ever be hacked, because who knows what's being worked on out there. However, our blockchain is a permission-based platform. And what that means is if the three of us are on the blockchain, there may be things that you and Vijay can do that I cannot do. And it also means that in order for a fourth party to be added, to be permissioned, all the three of us would have to agree. So if you think about it practically for a second, if something's going to get hacked, they would actually have to have the ability to slip by all three of us at one time in order for that to happen. Additionally, we're taking other measures with how we are storing critical documents. We're using hash technology. So the actual document itself will be stored offline, and what's left on the blockchain is hash. And so unless you have the hash, you can't get to the document, whether it's on the blockchain or offline.
Got it. What can you tell us about the roadmap, right? Because again, and I think coming back to blockchain, and it works as long as there's quite a bit of parties involved and on the platform, right? So if it's just three of us, it's it's probably too little. So what can you tell us about the roadmap, major milestones? What are you hoping to achieve? When do you hope to achieve it with TradeLens?
I'm glad you asked that question, because that is the most critical thing to success and value of a blockchain, is that everyone or more participation takes place. So I'll answer that two ways. First of all, we have very specific targets between our two firms, IBM and Maersk, where we've jointly agreed that we need to try to drive the entire ecosystem. So yes, we have teams of people who are engaging with BCOs. We have teams of people who are engaging with customs authorities as well as ports. And we have a team of folks who are engaging with other ocean carriers. It is our goal to, since we do have a ocean carrier-centric solution, because that's where a lot of the data about containers resides, we have a very specific strategy with trying to onboard as many ocean carriers as we can. And we are engaged with everyone. Conversations are at different levels, but I will tell you, no one questions whether or not having a central platform is a good idea, and also everyone that has viewed our solution thinks it's a very solid solution as well. Now, in terms of when you use the word roadmap, where I thought you were going with that, it has to do with the capabilities that we have. So today, the capabilities that we have. The TradeLens is the overarching product name, but the event management component of it is TradeLens as well. So today, in limited availability, that's what's available. Now, a client could sign up if they're on Maersk line, if they're on Hamburg Süd, they could sign up today and be able to have access and visibility to the containers. Later on this year, it is our direction to also have document management. So think about this as document sharing. So the very specific documents, certificate of origin, for example, bill of lading, packing list, those kind of documents that are tied to those events, that'll also be available. And of course, those documents will obviously reside on the blockchain. And then later on next year, our direction is to have what we call a product of the module, what we're calling Clearway. This will be the document filing. This is a lot more work that's involved with that. We'll be engaging. In fact, we just started beta on this, where we're engaged with other carriers. We're engaged with customs authorities around the globe to help build the workflows and then provide the documents, the associated documents that would monitor if you're shipping diamonds from South Africa to the United States, for example.
Got it. And yeah, Vijay.
No, we can go ahead.
Okay. Because I'm just if I'm to kind of continue from there. So again, blockchain is a community effort, and I think this has been a question that has come again and again, right? Because it's all about neutral parties being involved, right? And required. how do you see this moving forward? Because there's been quite a bit of comments, right? So Maersk has been involved, right? It's a joint project that you developed with Maersk. There's been a couple of comments that other shipping lines will not join because of Maersk, and because this is not seen as neutral because of Maersk. How would you comment that?
So first of all, I'm glad you brought that up, because I think that's the big elephant in the room, if you will. So the feedback that in the commentary that we've heard varies, but all of it has been consistent around the following things. First of all, security. All right, so when we explain to them how the blockchain is going to be set up and how every ocean carrier will have their own node and how nodes can't get information from other nodes, it has made everyone feel much more comfortable about how secure the data will be. Then there is the concept of ensuring that each of the carriers will be treated fairly. Right, because this is a jointly owned solution by IBM and Maersk, and we have contractually set up in our contracts that Maersk will be treated like any other ocean carrier. So it's not like Maersk Line can then, at a whim, go see the data of another carrier, whether it's CMA or Hapag or anyone else. And then the third piece of it is about the openness. It is absolutely designed to have as much participation as possible. I alluded earlier about what we're doing with the APIs, but also trying to make sure that we're building a solution that is based on standards for the industry. So this is not a proprietary based solution at all. And, so I'll stop there.
And I'll add a little bit to that. And Rado, you said this in your question, actually. Blockchain is a community effort, right? So it's not about getting one group on board or one organization on board. To actually make this work, you need the whole ecosystem on board. In the past, we didn't have a technology to address that, to actually bring everyone on board and to have that neutrality and security. Today we do. So that's the reason that we are also working not just with ocean carriers, but we are working with seaports, and we are working with customs authorities, inland authorities, and we're also working with logistics service providers and shippers, whether it's retailers or manufacturers. And we're also working with several partners who will also be linking their existing networks to blockchain so that it becomes that community network that can serve everyone.
So,
and I would add to this, Radu, that in IBM, we have customer advisory councils that many of our clients, many of the listeners may have participated in the past. And the purpose of the advisory councils have been to give advice and counsel on how we are perceived in the marketplace. They give feedback we give them confidential briefings on what our roadmap is. And this could be for any product or any service that the IBM company might have. We're going to take that same concept forward with TradeLens, where both, IBM and Maersk will, in addition to IBM and Maersk, we want to have a lot of the industry leaders. We want to have other ocean carriers on that advisory council, freight forwarders. We want to have ports, because we want to make sure that we're getting feedback from the marketplace. There's no value in any of the investments that we've made in the product to have it go in a direction that would be anti-ecosystem. So we're very much committed to that, and you can look to hear more about that advisory council that we're going to be developing in the very near future.
Mm-hmm. So that's a good point. And if I am to kind of follow up on my question, because I think that's why also, because it's a joint project, right? IBM Maersk, there's these questions coming up. So if I understand, and if I'm to summarize what you just shared, right? Maersk is kind of, they started and you developed it together, but it's kind of another user in the bigger ecosystem.
They are a participant.
Right? They're a participant in the bigger ecosystem. They don't own the ecosystem. The solution of the ecosystem is TradeLens, right?
That's correct.
That is being developed by jointly, but by IBM. And then basically every participant in the ecosystem has access to their own set of data, as well as the data that's being shared with them, with the other participants. I mean, they would not have, just like you said, right? If the data is shared between the three of us, we would need to all give permission to the fourth party.
Bingo.
So nobody would have super user. Let's say Maersk doesn't have super user.
No. Status. That's correct.
Okay, because I think that's basically what a lot of people have on their minds. Like, why, and that's something that I guess you would have to reframe, right, in presenting it.
Yes, I think reframe, but also clearly explain. I think that, and as we've had discussions with carriers, that has been something that's come up. And I think each time we meet with them, they get more and more comfortable with the approach that we're taking, both technically and as well as the business setup as well.
So I guess in the near future we might see CMA, CGA, we might see some other big names on the platform.
That is certainly our hope. That is definitely our hope, and maybe not in that particular order.
Yeah, maybe I shouldn't have been that specific with the names.
No, that's fine that you're specific with the names. But honestly, we in order for this to be successful and add value to the ecosystem, we have to have the major players as part of it. I think that if we can get to a place where we can have 80% of the containers on the platform, I think that would then be a game changer for the entire ecosystem.
Yes, because that would give the scale and I mean, I think with anything, right? The moment you have enough scale, it just flows, right? So, I mean, now you've just started it. You have about 94, 95 players. So the key is how do you... and that brings me to the question, how do you actually encourage and motivate more people to get on the platform, right? Because I would assume, back to maybe to the example with that container filled with roses, right? So I would assume if you have some case studies like that, maybe from one country to another country, maybe that's enough, right, to start with. And then you show them how, because of TradeLens, they were able to speed up things to, something like that. I'm thinking would encourage other people. What do you have in mind?
Sure. So a couple things. Let's kind of go back to the beginning. Remember I said earlier, blockchain is a platform, and TradeLens is a platform as well. It's a marketplace platform. Three things you have to have when you have a platform. Number one, an identified business problem. In this case, it's the fact that there's lots of paper involved with shipping in the global shipping space. There's also this lack of standards, lack of consistency of where data starts and where it winds up. So no one disputes that. The second piece of it is, do you understand or have you identified all the key players in the ecosystem? I think we have, because we go from BCO, who might be the exporter, all the way through to the beneficial cargo owner, who might be the importer, and everybody in between. So we've identified all of them. And then we created, what's the value proposition? We have a well-documented value proposition on what's in it for a customs authority, what's in it for a port, what's in it for the BCOs and other ocean carriers, freight forwarders. And we've had, A, it's pretty well documented, but B, we haven't had yet anyone say to us, this is not of any value to me. This is not going to help me. Are there BCOs who say, yes, I like the visibility, but I'm really more focused on how I'm going to be managing document sharing on the blockchain? Absolutely, they are saying that. Are there some BCOs who might say, hey, listen, this is great, but you have to have more ocean carriers on for me to see the value, or there's certain trade lanes that you have to have established. Yes, we're working on that. Are there certain ports who say, I'm interested in doing this. Can you make it easy for me to get on the platform? So we think we've been trying to go about this very methodically, but also very programmatically to address and encourage everyone in the ecosystem to participate.
And between the two organizations, we have coverage with most of the stakeholders that we are working with today. So we also try to check what stage of automation they are in, right? So because not everyone is in the same level of automation. So for example, if you take the government authorities, especially in Asia Pacific, they're all in different stages of automation. So if I take one particular example like India, where we need to really educate not only about blockchain as a technology, but also help them to automate some of their existing systems and processes so it's ready for adopting these technologies and the network in the future. So we do work with the customs authorities in India as an example to see how we can automate all of those CHAs and GHAs that exist across India today, and that can then connect to a network like TradeLens.
Yes.
So that's how we encourage and motivate these players.
You just brought up a very good point, DJ, and that is that we haven't talked about yet. We've talked about solving the problem, but there's also this has the ability to allow smaller members in the ecosystem or less sophisticated members in the ecosystem to leapfrog. Certainly, they've had plans and intentions on digitizing their environment. TradeLens and the blockchain technology will allow them to move faster. They have told us such. So we're seeing lots of interest from what I would say are the tier 2 or tier 3 countries around the world. They are very much interested in being on the platform.
That's an excellent point, actually, because it's kind of like from jumping from cash to payments, to payments by mobile without the cards involved.
Yeah.
And I just need to ask this question because I have it on my mind, right? Because again, there's different. Let's pinpoint corruption for a moment, right? So because also paper corruption sometimes is linked, right? So there's different countries in the world where there's, and especially in the customs authority, and I mean, it's a problem. It's a problem and we just have to deal with it.
Yeah.
I mean, will those guys, because the moment you start talking about digital solutions and full transparency, there's an innate, let's say, resistance from that particular, sometimes those particular players to join. Have you, of course, let's not name anybody, but have you come across that, and how do you address that?
The short answer is yes. The second answer is, countries that maybe a year ago would have been on the list that you would think would be anti this. All it takes is a change in leadership, and all of a sudden those things can completely turn around. There's probably nothing that we could say or do if someone wants to be corrupt and they want to keep that environment. There's probably nothing we could do about that. The technology would be able to address that for sure, certain. But at the end of the day, we can't strong arm anyone to embrace the technology. But we have seen with certain countries around the world, which again will remain nameless, who even as little as 6 months ago, we would have thought, well, they're not going to be interested, and they are incredibly interested in the technology because new government leaderships come in place, and they want to make that leapfrog. They see the bigger picture. Think about it this way. Customs authorities around the world, they really have two missions. The first mission is to improve the ability for trade to take place with their country. Okay. The second thing is to keep contraband out, right? So, and those two things can, in some extent, they kind of contradict one another. But with the TradeLens platform, it actually allows them to do both better. And that's why we're very excited about that. And again, we've been hearing that from certain authorities that we've been engaged with around the world.
So at a government level and especially senior management level, they are welcoming these kind of solutions to automate. Because ultimately, every country wants to ease the business dealings, so the ease of doing business which should improve. So they are really looking forward to see how they can do more business by being more open and quicker transactions, quicker turnaround. So I think ultimately, if we can get 80% of the containers on the network, that'll be a good first step, and then we can work through the rest.
No, good. I mean, thank you for the sharing, and it's great to hear because indeed, again, you cannot force anybody, but technology in general is an enabler to greater good for most cases.
Absolutely.
And I wanted to bring kind of to another question that is a little bit of an elephant in the room, let's say. So TradeLens is a platform that is delivered by the IBM cloud, right, to members around the world.
Correct.
However, TradeLens insists that blockchain is the core technology that powers the platform and ensuring that the data remains secured, permissioned, and distributed. Now, anybody with a little bit of knowledge of blockchain would immediately wonder how TradeLens data can possibly describe as distributed if, in fact, the blockchain resides on the IBM cloud. So if the TradeLens lives in the IBM server, then IBM can alter the blockchain, withhold data, censor transactions, mine information. So this is, let's say, there's been some concerns around it. May or may not be true, but I think maybe we should just put it out there and address it just to kind of clarify it.
Yeah, maybe.
I was going to say, between us, I hadn't heard that one, so I was saying to him earlier that I hope I do hear one. And you give me one that I haven't heard. I actually haven't heard that. I haven't heard that someone's afraid that IBM might manipulate the data. So.
Yeah, was that your question? That IBM might
how are you going to protect it if it's on the IBM cloud?
Well, again, the underlying technology actually helps you, right? Because the blocks that we talked about holds all these transactions, the valid transaction. And each block includes the hash of the prior block of the blockchain, right? In the blockchain, linking the two. So that's what actually forms the chain. So there is no way for anyone to manipulate this or change it without letting the whole ecosystem know about it.
Right.
So even if it doesn't matter where it resides, right? Because at the end of the day, the system it's a chain system.
Absolutely.
I think it's again with, I don't know where we got the question actually, but it's again it's not my question, yeah. But it's I think it also comes with a package that, again, any new technology, people typically, there's basically a lot of people that don't understand about it, right? And they have these concerns.
Right.
And I think cybersecurity in general and security of data in general over the last couple of years, we've seen, well, actually Maersk was deeply affected by it, right? Just a couple of years ago, has gotten a lot of people worried. So I think for me, the point of these questions that keep coming up around cybersecurity, because this is that's what I see it in the bulk of cybersecurity, are related to that. Are people like, is my data safe? Right? Is anybody that can do anything to manipulate? And of course, it doesn't make sense. I mean, you're a publicly listed company. If you do anything wrong, the market will respond, and you don't want to get into that. But I think it's on people's minds. Interestingly enough, it's on people's minds. So good to put it out there.
No, that's a fair point. I mean, probably a good case study on that is when you look at the data that's being collected for health with Watson Health. There hasn't been any examples where IBM has then taken that data and try to repurpose it to make money off of it later on. Right, the intent or the objective of the network. That's what the purpose of the data will be. IBM has no intent to then collect everyone's data for some other purpose. You're not going to be getting calls on your phone because of information that IBM collected. I say that a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but that's not the intent, and that's not what we... I think the technology prevents that from happening. I know the technology prevents that from happening anyway.
Yeah. And I'm curious in terms of coming a little bit, and maybe to close off the discussion, but coming a little bit in terms of how you see the future, right, and how you see the next 12 months. What would be your hope for TradeLens in the next 12 months? Like, do you have some milestones? Like, I mean, we would love to have another 100 players on the platform. We'd love to have some case studies that we can show.
Right. I think first of all, that's a great question. There's two pieces to that. There's the business value example, right, of it, and then there's the adoption side of it. So from a business value standpoint, I would love to be able to, and I know I speak for both IBM and Maersk. We'd like to be able to get to a place where we have enough data sets on the platform, meaning enough carriers, enough ports, enough customs authorities, and BCOs, where it will start to become the standard that helps solve this very challenging business problem that everyone acknowledges is an issue. I think we have very specific targets that we try to focus on to try to, for example, I mentioned getting 80% of the containers on the platform. Well, at a real high level, we'd like to be at a place we're at 24% now. We'd like to be at 40% by the middle of next year. I think that would be a huge leap forward for us. Adoption takes time. And I think that's the other level set that I would put into the equation, because it depends on what seat you're in. Right? If you're a port, you're saying, "Gee, it'd be great if you had other carriers who are onboarded." If you're a BCO, BCOs are saying, "Hey, listen, you've got 50% of my containers today. I'd really like to see you get 70%. Can you tell me how your conversations are going with other carriers? By the way, I'd like to have my bank on there as well." There's marine insurance companies who are saying, boy, having all this data on one platform creates a lot of value. Boy, when you guys get a certain amount of containers, then I absolutely want to be on the platform. So it's you got to move all at the same time. We can't be too carrier focused. We can't be too BCO focused. All we can do and what we should be focused on is trying to build the ecosystem in a balanced fashion where everyone benefits, because at the end of the day, that is what the whole purpose of TradeLens is to create value for everyone in the ecosystem, not just for the ocean carriers, not just for beneficial cargo owners or ports or freight forwarders. It's to create value for everyone.
For the ecosystem. Mm-hmm.
I think in the next 12 months, like Todd mentioned, we will set up an industry advisory board and work with the whole ecosystem. So my hope is we'll get more challenges to tackle, we'll get more problems to solve, so we can take this to a new level in the next 12 months, in addition to what we already have planned. Right?
And I didn't realize, so 24%, you have 24% of the worldwide containers currently on the platform. So that's quite a number already. And do you think that this could actually lead to, because again, we talked about, and a question that popped into my head, we talked about different countries, different standards, different, in reality, it's quite fragmented. I mean, there's some bigger organizations out there, right, that try to standardize the things, but there's also certain countries which follow their own. So do you think that if TradeLens really gets an adoption rate of 80%, that could potentially lead to a worldwide kind of unified standard of shipping?
Well, I think that one of the things we're really focused on, again, is not necessarily displacing any of the activities that people may have going on. What we hope to provide is an open platform where people can connect into the platform. Mm-hmm. So if I just made a huge investment, if I'm a port, I just made a huge investment into a system, does that mean I have to get rid of that port system? No, absolutely not. Because if the bar is that high to get onto the platform, no one will do it. I think we have created some very well thought out, very well tested templates that we've learned through our beta program, where everyone in the ecosystem, we have a pretty solid methodology of how to onboard them. So we know that it's going to take 4 to 6 weeks for most BCOs to be onboarded. We know that a port, depending on the port, it could take as little as 4 days, or it could take as long as 14 days. Right? So we know with carriers, and we're probably looking more in that 3 to 5 month range. So we know that now. So once we know that, we know how to staff up to make sure we've got the people available. But we also can give a realistic view of what those enterprises should be expecting. And so far, so good. So far, when we've had those really in-depth discussions, people have felt really, really good that this is not going to be a huge hurdle that first, technically, they won't be able to benefit from, and they see the opportunity to benefit from the data being centralized later on as well.
Super. No, very great to have made that, or to have reiterated that point, because I think that can be again a challenge for people if they think that it's too hard, or if they need to give up any of their existing technology, right? So thank you guys. It's been a pleasure. Todd, Vijay, thank you for the sharing. Thank you for the open addressing of bigger or smaller elephants in the room. Thank you for telling us, your plans. And I think it's a really exciting times, right? I mean, if the technology picks up and as the technology picks up, I think you're going to have more and more successful case studies that show improvements in the way global trade is being done. And I really hope that in 12 months from now we'll sit together again, and maybe you have 80% of the people on the platform.
Well, let's hope next time when we do it, next year when we do it, we're joined by members of the ecosystem talking about how good the platform is.
It would be my pleasure. Thank you guys for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Radu. And I know we have several industry experts in the podcast audience, so we welcome their feedback as well. What else would you like to see in the platform, right? What are the problems that we could help solve? So welcome any feedback. Feel free to reach out to us anytime.
Super.
Thank you.
Super. Yeah, we'll put, when we upload this, we'll also open it. So if you have questions or further concerns or further feedback, we can pass it to Todd and to Vijay. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to our podcast. If you liked what you heard, be sure to follow us on radupalamario.com/podcast for all the show notes, links, and extra tips covered in the interview. Make sure also to subscribe to our emailing list to get the news in the nick of time. If you're listening through a streaming platform like iTunes or Stitcher and you like what we do, please kindly review and give us 5 stars so we can keep the energy flowing and get more people to find out about our podcast. I'm most active on LinkedIn, so do feel free to follow me to stay tuned for our latest articles as well as future guests for the podcast. And if you have any suggestions or any other idea, please feel free to write to me. I respond to all. And also, please make sure not to miss our next episode, where we will be having a few other C-level and top leaders in supply chain joining us. Stay tuned.